Lacey, forced to grow up too quickly, was told that all she was good for was the sex industry. While her captor used romantic means at first to get her to comply, he quickly switched to threatening pain and shouting her into submission. Terrified for her life, but still wanting to please her trafficker, referred to as pimps, Lacey joined the sex trade and quickly became regular. This is the sad, but true story of many children and young adults all around the world. Sex trafficking has started gaining popularity and also obscurity as more and more victims are taken into the sex trade. Thankfully, there are more organizations such as Shared Hope International and International Justice Mission, IJM, that have dedicated themselves to stopping sex trafficking. My credibility for this speech is that my sister works with Shared Hope International, and I have participated in some events designated to raise awareness of sex trafficking so that it can be better stopped. So, my first main point will be emphasizing what victims of sex trafficking have to go through every day, and why it is such a problem. My second main point will be talking about what the police, Shared Hope International, and IJM are doing to put an end to sex trafficking. Finally, my third point will be explaining how both teenagers and adults can make a difference by raising awareness, and where more resources can be found to inform others of this problem. To begin, let me throw some statistics out there. There are about 15 million children, both boys and girls, who every year have been abused and victimized, all for the sex industry. In fact, child sex trafficking is the third largest illegal industry behind drugs and weapons. This is because there is an extremely low chance of being caught, but a huge profit, since humans can be sold multiple times. In addition, most children who are victims of sex trafficking are around 13 years old. The youngest, however, could be 8 or 9. These children are recruited by people called pimps. There are two main kinds of pimps, Romeo pimps and guerrilla pimps. Romeo pimps are manipulative and pretend to be the boyfriend of the victim, while guerrilla pimps use force and violence to scare the victims into submission. Those who are most at risk for being sex trafficked are those who don't have any high self-esteem or have had any kind of substance, sexual, or physical abuse, or are runaways. I also want to define some common sex trafficking terms, which I might be using. A pimp is anybody who is getting money from the sexual exploitation of another person. Another term is the bottom girl. Bottom girl is one girl among several controlled by a single pimp, who is in charge of the rest and supervises them. She also reports rule violations, inflicts punishments, and recruits other victims. So, what is being done to end sex trafficking? For starters, the police and IJM have started working together with therapists in countries around the world to find the victims of sex trafficking and free them from their abusive and controlling pimps. IJM also collaborates with the law to put the pimps and others involved in exploiting victims into jail, where they can't hurt anybody else. IJM has a very strong system devoted to justice, and with the help of the communities they work with, IJM can fix the problem. In addition, Shared Hope International works to restore former victims of sex trafficking into communities that will support them and try to give them a normal life, away from other pimps. They also host events that raise awareness and funds to stop sex trafficking, so that people can be better educated about the impact that they can have on making the world a safer place. Finally, we as teenagers and adults can make a huge difference in ending sex trafficking. First off, teenagers need to stop making jokes about sex trafficking and pimps. They need to know that sex trafficking is not a joke, and is a very serious reality. In fact, by not taking sex trafficking seriously, it actually isn't seen as a big problem, which then leads to a bigger sex industry and more victims. This is because if the police don't think that sex trafficking is a huge problem for all communities, then they won't try as hard to end it, hence the obscurity. Then, teenagers can be educated about the signs of sex trafficking among their friends, and be told to be on the lookout for pimps or bottom girls. Those signs could be a controlling older boyfriend, signs of physical abuse, depression, or a small tattoo or symbol. Pimps would probably be older men with no proof of a real job, but who still have an expensive taste and lavishes his victim with money and jewelry to gain his or her trust. In most cases, if you think there's something wrong, go with your gut instinct. You might just save a life. In conclusion, sex traffickers are terrible people, and the people who have been affected by them have gone through a personal hell when they were a victim of sex trafficking. Because sex trafficking is starting to become more widely recognized as a problem, the police and nonprofit organizations are working extremely hard to stop it. However, even though police and other trained professionals are doing their best, that doesn't mean that we, as a community and as human beings with strong morals, should sit back and pretend it doesn't exist. It is everywhere among us, and we can help fight back. In fact, it is even more important for us in the Tacoma-Seattle area to be on our guard for the signs of sex trafficking. This is because Seattle, already a huge place for sex trafficking, is right in the middle of the Interstate 5 corridor, which makes it super easy for traffickers to transport their victims from one city, from one state, to another. We are living in the middle of a silent war, so we need to be educated to help the victims who have no voice. Thank you for listening to my speech.